Welcome to the Local Marketing Source Weekly Update, brought to you by localmarketingsource.com.
This week's Local Marketing Update is brought to you by Scott Gallagher. Scott is the co-founder of Local Marketing Source and has become the recognized expert in providing online marketing services to local businesses. Follow Scott on Twitter at ScottGallagher5 and on Facebook.com/ScottPGallagher.
Hey, well, good afternoon, everyone. Scott Gallagher here with Local Marketing Source, bringing you our weekly local marketing industry update. Now, next week, there's going to be some changes for the regular call on Wednesday, because Wednesday is Christmas Eve. So our call is going to be on Tuesday, December 23rd at 4 p.m. Eastern. We haven't set the date yet, but it's likely the following week because of New Year's. It's also going to be on the Tuesday. That would be the 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then after that, we will get back into that. Now, having said that, we've got to start thinking about the end of the year and what we are going to be doing next year. So our weekly update this week, we are going to be getting into some planning and what you should be doing and discussions you should be having for planning with your clients in 2015. But before we do that, there really wasn't a lot of changes in Google last week. If you were on the call last week, we were talking for quite some time, went on for almost an entire hour of updates. And this week, well, there's just not too much. And it's funny. I would probably be crazy if I really thought this, but there seems to be a trend to that when there's typically our calls are 30 minutes long, and then when I have a 45-minute to an hour call, the following week seems to be really short, and so it's it just seems to be a trend. Maybe we could use it for some predictive texting, but in any event, we're going to talk about Google's support and their business support with local businesses on a worldwide front. So if you've got clients around the globe. And then finally, I just want to talk about some personal experiences with the SEO sales trail. If you're new with Local Marketing Source, the SEO sales trail is our sales process, and we go out and acquire different clients and implement it, and it's worked for many students. And I've been in business sales for 20 years, a little more, probably 22 years now, and I haven't done any sales in 4 years. And it dawned on me, and I thought, well, we've begun to target a new industry. We've got different channels that are there, and I know I've got students that tend to struggle with acquiring new clients and whatnot. I've got to get back out with my feet on the streets, and I've done that. So I want to share some experiences that I've had in the last 60 days about actually doing some real sales again. And it was nice to get back. I'm not a huge fan of sales, but it needs to be done, and I did it excitedly. And there was some new observations that I had. I was definitely realized that anything that you teach, you've got to do. So it reminds me that it's nice that I've got an agency behind me, because we do this every single day and fully understand what it takes. So I want to share some of my recent sales experience that hopefully will add some value. In any event, why don't we get going here? We can get started. And Google, if you recall, 2-3 months ago, Google has been significantly changing their support. They've been doing a lot of different testing. They actually allowed for phone calls and people to call them up and actually have a support number. And we weren't too sure what Google was going to do with this, but it was about 4 months ago that it was definitely solidified in the United States. Google had a full support number. You can call them. We used it internally. It was just amazing of how flexible Google was. And for Google, for being a company of their age, which in today's internet world, they're dinosaurs, they really predicated themselves on the fact that they really didn't have a lot of people touching their users, and they really struggled on the fact, but they did launch it. And so now Google has actually rolled this out around the world. And what's interesting is when you call Google, you're talking to English-speaking people, and you're likely speaking with people that are at Google in the United States, somewhere in California. Their hours, it's really interesting, their hours for international operations are now posted and available for companies in all over the place. And so I'm going to go over some of these right now. Nick, I can see Nick's just getting on the line. This is going to be exciting for you because you can now contact Google directly from New Zealand and speak with Google regarding your clients. But you can only do it between the hours of 8 p.m. to noon the next day. What does that say? Well, these people are probably in the United States. And for anybody that's not in the United States, it's on the call right now. It's been a trend in this country for the last 20 years that any call center that we call is somebody in India. And I don't want to knock anything over there, but the pet peeves that people have is it's just very difficult to have communication. And, there's some Indians that speak English very, very, very well. Don't get me wrong. It's just that seems to be some of the challenge. And so it's really nice actually communicating with Google, and you say something once and they have an understanding and they're well trained. But if you're in the UK, you're going to be covered from 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. Anywhere in the United States, you're covered or North America, from 4 a.m. until 9 p.m. And over in Delhi, you're covered from 2:30 p.m. until 6:30 a.m. So that's interesting to see. I was able to get my first live support in February of 2013, and the experience was not great. But ever since we begun dealing with Google, it's just amazing. I'm really, really ecstatic by what they are doing and how they're moving forward to be able to help. So utilize that service, guys. Trust me, there's going to be many times to get duplicate content removed from their local site, duplicate pages. If you've got to gain control of claiming a listing from an email address that you didn't know what it was, those are going to be some of the typical situations. Almost every client that we have has some form of challenging communication of that set. So we've used it several times. All right, well, because there wasn't a lot of updates this week, as I had mentioned, we were going to start talking about some planning and planning for 2015. And this is just kind of a section, what are we doing in our agency? And throughout the month of December is a month of planning and what we look at. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I am doing from a management perspective on how my project managers are getting stuff together. And at the beginning of the month, I required that every client has a quarterly plan developed and an annual plan as to what the project managers hope to achieve. At that point in time, I get the report and I look at it and I benchmark that report of their intentions against the original intentions, or in other words, the original plan that we had. What did we want to achieve? How many profiles? How many profile citations, how many press releases do we want to create? Did we have any article distribution? Did they get in the local newspapers, chambers, et cetera, et cetera? I also look at exposure of ranking and, how many reviews have acquired over the time frame since we've had them, and how many citations we've acquired. I use the Bright Local reports, and, we take our initial reports. So if we had the client at the beginning of the year, or if we acquired the client throughout the year, when we did the first SEO report, they may have, let's say 17 citations, and we've acquired 35 citations. So that will be a 100% increase with 17 citations. And so I look at that. I look at the number 17. I look at the percentage increase because it's weighted. Is it in alignment? But in any event, now, with planning, at this point in time, now that I've reviewed the initial plan of the project managers and that I've benchmarked specifically some of the metrics that we've looked at and where they lie and how far we've got to look at, that's when I can say, all right, well, we've got to change the plan up a little bit. We've got to create some additional video content, or we've got to work on reviews, or wherever we find the holes is going to go into the first quarter. And those have to be accomplished by the first quarter. And I try to look at every client as a 6-month window and break that 6-month window into 2 different elements. The first elements being, all right, we're not ranking where we need to be. What is some of the content that we need to create that's heavy level, very powerful content? And then the second half of that quarter, we look at, okay, what type of content is ultimately going to improve conversion? But if we're improving conversion, we know it's also going to help rankings. I'm just trying to discuss where this content ultimately is placed. And then so once you have a rough overview of a quarterly plan for each of the two quarters, then you can look at that quarter on a monthly basis. And we break the activities down on a month-by-month basis. In other words, every single month of the year, at least at this point in time for the next 6 months, we know exactly what we are doing for every single client every single month. And some of that activity, might be getting citations from data providers. And we just, Bright Local may have 120 in there, and we want to acquire, part of our goal is going to say, well, we want to acquire 15 a month. We want to acquire 2 public citations on a monthly basis. We want to be listed in 3 extra local directories. We want a blog post on a local blog, 1 per month. We want to be listed in 3 extra theme directories. We want to be listed in 1 theme blog, and we want to acquire 1 citation perhaps off the unorthodox list. We want to create 1 article, 1 blog post for the client, 3 videos over the quarter, etc., etc., etc. And you can manage that in different project management software if you'd like, or you can manage that in Excel. Either which way, you're just tending to follow the execution of it. And then so I can go back on a monthly basis after the project managers have met with the clients on the month as to what they've done. I can go back, meet with my project managers, and compare their actual activity to the intended activity that we set forth as a team. And if they're short, we figure out how we're going to pick that up next month, or maybe it's the actual project manager that's having problems. Now, in the actual details, I'll also go and do spot checks on the different content that's being created. And I don't have a system in place for measurement of quality of content of my team. And in 2015, I'd like to figure out a way to somehow evaluate my team on their effectiveness of quality of content, because I'm not able to see every piece of content created. But at this point in time, I do a lot of spot checks with my project managers, and sometimes I'll find some content that's not, I'm not happy to put my company name on it. Other times I'm kind of blown away and go, wow, that was amazing. So it all tends to work out right now. But, I like to use the gut feeling as an entrepreneur quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I just, talking about sales and the SEO sales trail, I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, I'll share a story. I'm going to share this story. And, we just acquired 5 new clients. It's really 1 owner, and it's just 5 separate businesses. One of the business happens to have 2 locations, but there are 5 physical businesses, 5 physical LLCs, and 5 physical locations. So we've got to treat that like 5 different customers, and they're paying a hefty monthly fee for each of those situations. Now, so it was a pretty lucrative opportunity. They're the largest player in the town that they operate in, and they've got a gym that's 247. It's just a beautiful, beautiful building, a really great opportunity. And the prospect wanted call tracking and wanted to employ call tracking. And you know how I feel about call tracking, but when a client says, I want it, or there's no deal, you kind of tend to try to fit a square peg into a round hole and say, okay, how can we make this work? Maybe we've got to shave the corners off the peg here. But the fact of the matter is if you start to utilize call tracking in the local sense and getting call tracking on different profiles for different channels, what's going to happen there? Do you think it's possible to get ranked with call tracking? Of course it is, even though it's one of these things that's going to hurt against us. I got obsessed and I put my head under a rock for an entire weekend and studied and read and studied and read and tried to figure this out. How can this be done? Business owners need this. Why is Google doing it this way? What are some of their thoughts? What's going on inside their head? Where are they trying to get from this? What is it going to be? Are we ever going to have these solutions? How am I going to position myself for prospects moving forward? This seems to be a big trend. And I'm glad I went through the exercise because I realized a few different things. And that the one thing that really struck me hard was word of mouth advertising is the best form of advertising or marketing for any business, pretty much any business, and pretty much for a history of business, right? We know this stuff. And that's not going to change. I mean, when a friend gives me a recommendation, that's better than any recommendation any internet device could possibly give me. That's not going to change. We're human beings. Mother Nature has built us to communicate with other human beings and not electronic devices. We're going to get more emotion from dealing from a human being than we do from an electronic device, and we make decisions off of emotions. So it's just our fundamental composure of who we are. You're not going to be able to replicate that. But on the notion of word of mouth and on the discussion of branding, when somebody gives a recommendation, they want to send us to one spot where they went to, their experience that they had. Well, in a lot of cases, that really starts with a phone number. And you change that phone number, that experience is going to change significantly. It starts off in a completely different sense. You're going into a different door of the building. And so that friend is naturally not going to say, go to this. They're going to naturally give the phone number that they've had. And then boom, you go through that door. You can't track that. There's no possible way to track who's giving what phone number to who through personal relationships, right? You can't track it. And maybe the government with their drones and implants into people, if that ever happens one day, they may be able to track that. Or if we're all wearing Google Glass, or we're all wearing certain wearable devices that record our conversations. But until that happens, that can't be tracked. Your best form of marketing can't be tracked. You get that, okay? So there are definitely marketing initiatives that a business can leverage that can't be tracked. Word of mouth is the most organic form of marketing that could potentially exist. In other words, organic, it just grows on its own. It doesn't need anything else to grow. It just grows on its own. And that's what I think about organic in terms of internet marketing. It just does it on its own. Just let it go. So when it comes to being listed on, for example, free sites that are out there, ones that we can't pay money, and Google goes and looks at these sites that you have listings on, and they're building authority based off of that, and they're looking at elements of reviews that have a component of word of mouth. That Google's intention of organic rankings are based off of their algorithm. They don't want it to be manipulated. In other words, they're trying to take a picture of the word of mouth advertising on the internet. They're trying to figure out algorithmically their best process of doing that. And therefore, if the phone number is changed, you no longer have this organic environment. I'm getting very philosophical here, but when I thought about this and thought this through, I realized that no wonder it's going to hurt the rankings. It ultimately hurts. It's like getting into multiple back doors and this and that. There's no way that we could utilize call tracking for any organic channels. I get it now. I understand what the means are, but through the paid channels, of course it makes sense, because that's where you're spending money in. And Google says if you're spending money somewhere, you should know if you're getting a return on that. But you can't go out and buy word of mouth advertising. The only way to buy it is to have a good business, a better product, a better service, better customer service, better follow-ups, etc., etc. But you can't buy that word of mouth marketing. So we can't track it. Organic listings are the exact same way. You can't buy organic listings, so you can't track it. Do you get that? In other words, to make a long story short, this beautiful prospect walked in there and said, I can't do this deal. There's no way that I'm going to utilize any call tracking numbers for anything that we do. And I went on this big dissertation. I get passionate. And long story short, we ended up getting the deal because we were able to convince the prospect that there are other ways to measure the metrics of the business. Of course there are. We're not going to get you exact numbers, but there are definitely other ways to measure the metrics. So I wanted to share some of that too. Just before I finish off here, guys, I just want to talk a little bit about the SEO sales trail. And like I said, selling information, selling the local marketing source membership and the course that we have and the material, it's not the business that I thought it was when I got into it 4 years ago. Selling information on the internet is a whole different ball of wax. It's a whole different business. And I thought, you know what? I've got a good course and put it on the internet and people will come and buy it. And then I believed in my content. I believed in my ability to teach it. And I believed I'll be a millionaire like all these other information millionaires that are out there. I'll have a good product. I'm buddies with some of these guys. I'll call them up. They'll do a joint venture promotion for me. They'll send out one email and boom, I'll make a whole bunch of cash. It's the furthest thing from that as possible. It's amazing over the years how many people have seen to get into the information business and ultimately fail. Well, it's fully understandable. I can talk forever about why I think that happens. And, us at Local Marketing Source, we've never done joint ventures with anybody. Well, Dan Thies, we did one with. We didn't promote his, but he promoted us. But other than that, we haven't had any joint ventures. We built everything organically, just creating good content, getting exposure out there. We have organic rankings and whatnot. But the point is one thing I learned at a very young age of this information business was that teaching makes you better at what you do, and doing what you do makes you a better teacher. But you stop one or the other, and you don't get the leverage of the first. In other words, if I built my agency, realized, heck, I can go and teach this and go and sell it and put all my time and energy into selling this product that I can sell over and over and over and have gravy money coming in. I'm going to lose touch with my ability to teach if I don't manage my agency. And fortunately, it just worked into my work week that, again, the 80-20 rule fell into place. I spent 80% of my time in my agency 4 days a week and 20% of my time into Local Marketing Source, which makes Local Marketing Source just a hobby. And that's all it's really been ever since we started the business 4 years ago. We've sold over 800 students, have about 100 active marketers at any given point. And it's just a lot of fun. At this point in time, it's just a tremendous amount of fun. But I lose touch. And, as I grow my agency, I don't need to get out onto the sales floor. And I always believe as a manager that I can't manage or ask anybody to do something that I haven't done. So I do try to get my hands wet in all areas of my business on a regular basis. And I lost touch with sales. And, I've been in B2B sales for 22 years, but it was probably about 4 years or so. I was thinking, somewhere around 2010, maybe, that I was last selling. And that's, even getting on the phone and talking to prospects or going to a trade show, or let alone getting out and cold calling businesses. And, one day a few months ago, it dawned on me, and I realized, all right, I'm changing my business to focus entirely on chiropractors, only because I'm passionate about chiropractors. Almost every single day, I think to myself, God, this is a shitty industry I chose. It really is. They don't have a lot of money, and they're well, I won't go on with it all, but I'm still passionate about it. I really believe in the practice of what they do, so I continue with it. And I'm not chasing the money. But point is, I had to get out there, and I figured, all right, well, I don't have any clients in my hometown, so let's make some stuff happen. And I felt a lot of pressure, because here I was getting back onto the sales floor. I was teaching all these hundreds of students, and I felt the pressure that I had to perform and get results, and to prove to myself that the teachings of the SEO sales trail, even though I'd been doing it and knew that the numbers worked and everything worked for 20 years, I felt some fear. And there's a few observations that I had that when I was out there. And one of the first most glaring aspect was when I first started selling SEO in 2005, I'd talk to a prospect and I'd get the deer in the headlight look. What is this? Now it's the opposite. Every prospect we've ever spoken to understands to a degree what SEO is. Their understanding, it has about an 80% chance, I think, of being wrong. But they know what SEO is. They've been solicited many of times. We've got competition that ranges from $300 a month up to $3,000 a month. I've got competition from the big name internet service providers to the local newspapers to the yellow pages. Those are three major industries, major verticals that are now quote unquote SEO. The competitive landscape has just significantly blown up. It's a very different sale. When I realized that, I went, okay, all right, well, now there's even more pressure to perform. And I started to think about the 90-day, $10,000 a month recurring challenge that I continually put out there, and looked at the numbers and went, wow, got to make this happen. Got to make this happen. So with some of these observations, guys, some of these fears that were instilled, and the aspect that I was motivated to make this happen, 4 years rusty of not actually selling face-to-face. Even good old Scott gets a little nervous and a little scared from time to time, but I pulled the trigger. And with all of these observations that I had, there was some other confirmations that I received. And the one biggest confirmation that I've got from this activity, guys, is plain and simple. Hard work and consistency always pays off. No matter what, in sales, even shitty salespeople can sell something if you try hard enough. Mark my words, anybody that fails at business is more than likely the reason themselves that business failed. And if you can't see that and hold yourself accountable towards that, then you should take a really good look at yourself in the mirror and consider what you are going to be and who you're going to be in 2015. The biggest key to success, in my opinion, in this business and any business is hard work and consistency. And the reason why I say that is with this sales process, you follow the numbers and you want how much money revenue per month? Well, you work yourself backwards and the numbers are all the same, guys. You've got to make 100 phone calls. You've got to get on the phone. You can't be focusing in on these electronic means and lead generations and email marketing to be able to open the door. It's not going to work. You've got to have the volume initially and picking up the phone and talking to people. The influence is significant and getting those appointments and recognizing that at each stage you've got a goal. And you set your goals at very, very small little chunks. Today, I'm going to make 25 phone calls. Today, I'm going to book one appointment. And you do that every day consistently for 90 days, and you're going to achieve those numbers. I have no doubt in my mind I've done it again, over and over in my lifetime. And in the last 90 days, in a brand new fresh market, getting out there, brought on 7 new clients myself with no prior relationships. It's almost $11,000 in recurring revenue on a monthly basis. And that was done in 47 days. From day one. No previous relationships, nothing. The one thing I have to earn me the instant credibility is I walk in there with my book. But don't tell me you guys don't have a book, because you could use my book. And it will take you 4 to 8 hours to re-edit the book for your own liking, for your own business. Don't tell me it costs a lot of money, because it doesn't. You have your gas to get out there, your $2.31 for your book. And on December 17th, we started November 1st. I mailed my book directly to 17 local chiropractors in one town. We eventually, the week later, we hit up 4 more local surrounding towns. Followed up with calls. Did some direct cold calling of those that we didn't even send content to. And like I said, we've now got 7 clients that we've added since November 1st of $11,000 recurring revenue. And I look back and I think, man, holy Christ. Because even though I didn't sell 4 years ago, guys, from 4 years ago, probably for 2 or 3 years prior to that, so probably for 7 years, I have not been the core sales channel in my agency. Probably the first couple of years of my agency, I was there, and then I would try to bring on salespeople, and they constantly, I couldn't get them to sell. My whole business has been built with the momentum during the sales process. I worked my ass off every single day for 2 to 3 years, and then I was able to get 4 or 5 years of my business growth out of it with those initial things. With 47 days from November 1st to December 17th. Just a little bit of effort up to today. So the one key to that is the number of times that the phone was picked up. And that's it. It's the front end activity. So I just want to give a reminder, guys, that when you get into 2015, at the beginning of the year, you're going to have the motivation after your holidays to come back and work hard. And that's when you work the hardest. And have beside you, I want to make this many phone calls today, or I want to visit this many places, or I want to talk to this many decision makers every single day. And you will get there. All right. This comes to the conclusion of my weekly update. I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to take 30 seconds right now, and I'll come back and open the floor to any questions that you guys might have.
Thanks for watching the Local Marketing Industry Update. We've got these things coming out every single week, so if you liked with what you heard, just click the button right above me right here to subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to get a little bit more, right over here, go check out localmarketingsource.com. We've got free reports that you can grab. You can even register for a free marketing course to get in and see the portal. Or just go ahead and follow us on some of the social channels. We'll be around. Until next time.